How does a game with no dialogue, no cuts, and no surface level complexity convey a story effectively? How does it manage to make memorable moments for the player? And more importantly, how does it manage to stand out from the plethora of other games in its genre?
Created in 2006, the company Playdead was created by developers Arndt Jensen and Dino Patti. Their first video game launch was in the year of 2010 with the game Limbo, which had quite the positive reception on launch and still does to this very day. It was just very unique in nature, a game with no cutscenes, no loading screens, and therefore no interruptions. It is just a seamless experience from start to finish, where the world building guides you through a premise as you piece together a story from said premise. Upon the success of this title's launch, however, Playdead did not do what a lot of studios would in this situation, like doubling down on the formula and working quickly to get the next game out in order to keep the hype train going. Instead, they would not release anything for the next 6 years. Inside is a game that presents itself as a simple concept, a platformer with puzzles to solve alongside an albeit not terrifying but rather disturbing atmosphere. The game is often said to be the next evolution to Limbo, where that game took a 2D approach. Inside decides to tackle its premise through a 2.5D approach. 2.5D, for reference, is in between 2D and 3D, meaning that even though the depth of a third dimension is felt, it doesn't go fully into that. Speaking of its visuals though, Inside takes yet another different approach for it. There's a really good YouTube video highlighting the rendering of the game, which I'd highly recommend to check out if you're more into the technical side of things. But to sum it up, as the title of that video suggests, they took a low complexity to high fidelity approach. On the surface, the presentation looks very simplistic. There is practically little to no UI on screen during gameplay. No loading screens, none of that. Just the adventure of a boy from start to finish with no interruptions. And that's done on purpose, of course, as it allows them to express a story in a way that makes them stand out. In a way that doesn't require the most flashy and bombastic graphics. There is a popular ideology in regard to this matter. Less is more. What that effectively means in this case is that even though everything seems to be less detailed, without a ton of polygons in the character models, alongside a fixed camera, the game is just as efficacious, if not even more, than the games that don't abide by this choice. Inside takes a simple approach, but when you look a little bit deeper, you start to realize the complexities behind every design detail.
The game starts off with you playing as a boy wearing a red sweater. There's no UI on the screen as you're just trying to figure out the controls. Speaking of which, the controls are kept fairly simplistic. You can move left, you can move right, you can jump, you can grab onto things, and you can interact with them. I believe this was done so that the controls feel intuitive and therefore it doesn't take you very long to adjust to them. This game feels like an interactive movie in a sense, because there are no interruptions. That helps to keep the player immersed in this world that Playdead has created.
The world, as is evident fairly quickly into your first playthrough, seems to be some kind of a dystopian world. A world that has lost a lot of color and vibrance. It's not like Limbo where the absence of color is even more apparent. No, Inside takes it a step further, using extremely muted tones and color balance. The boy's sweater, although being red, is not a type of red that would immediately grasp someone's attention. It's a soft but darker red, just like how every part of the environment feels as if a grey filter has been put on top of it, to remove any sense of warm colors, to remove any sense of relatability, to remove anything that could look natural enough to break the immersion of the game. The game starts off in a dark forest with a very foggy atmosphere, as it provides a sense of mystery. Something I thought would be interesting to point out is that the very first time you see the sky in the game, it looks dull and gloomy, a reflection of how this world has turned out to be, due to some event that might have happened.
The first time you get to see a clear sky in the game also implies a similar theme. Even though it's a bright blue sky, the dystopian landscape is able to contrast it just enough to where even that doesn't feel natural anymore. Because nothing feels natural anymore. Whether that be the industrial setting, the animals, or the people. Speaking of which, how does Inside depict the people of the dystopian world?
The people in this game are depicted as zombies, basically. Their movements reinforce that unnatural feeling, as if they're being controlled by an individual or multiple individuals even. However, Playdead also displays a level of ingenuity with this aspect of the game, by not only making it a background element of the game, but by also giving us a first-hand experience. A little while into the game, you find this machine hanging from the ceiling with yellow lights coming from it. It seems like a helmet or something that he could put on. After handling a questionably natured aggressive pig, we get access to this device, which is our first instance of this phenomenon taking place, as we're certainly no longer able to control the player character. Instead, we now control 4 background human characters. This bit of added gameplay provides more depth to this concept in my opinion, as it does an effective job of establishing this fact even further. And it's not like this is a rare occurrence. Plenty of puzzles in the game require you to solve them using these devices. On the topic of that pig, however, why was it acting so aggressively towards the boy? Well, we find out soon after, as the boy ends up finding what seems to be a worm that had infected the mind of the pig. And this is evident considering the fact that after the worm is taken out, the pig no longer acts the same way towards the player. All of these unnatural and weird factors really make you wonder, what's actually going on with Playdead's inside?
Well, there are quite a few interpretations to say the least. Yet another interesting fact about this game is that we don't actually get to know the underlying plot in any. The game was made with the player's interpretation of events in mind, which means that any kind of explanation could be retrofitted to make it work. Which, of course, is a great design detail, but what that also effectively means is that we will never get to know what the original premise was, at least when the game. When I finished my playthrough, I was just left with a ton of questions, to say the least.
That's Inside.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah. Yeah,
Like-
we beat it. Yeah,
Yeah, like we beat it, but like I have a lot of questions. So. Lastly, I'd quickly like to bring up an aspect the game excels at just as much as in others. That being the music. It genuinely sets that chilling yet explorative tone. It presents that sense of mystery that a dystopian world would, just as effectively as the visuals do, as previously discussed. I'd recommend listening to these OSTs on YouTube whenever you're planning to relax and listen to some music. My personal favorites include the Water, Shockwave, Sunk, and Forest segments. In fact, I've been playing the OSTs from the game in this video so far, but I'd still say you should check them out separately. So the links are in the description and the video cards if you'd be interested to do so.
And with that comes the end of this review, revisit, retrospective. I'm not sure what to call it as of yet, but regardless, I think it'll be better if you get to experience this game for yourself, instead of me talking about all the other in-depth aspects of plot beats. I especially would not like to take that away from people who haven't played it themselves as of yet, so definitely go check it out when you can. This 2016 entry from Playdead, in my opinion, deserves your playtime.